Thank you. Welcome to the Finance Commission meeting of Wednesday, February 17th. We're meeting in the Robin and Thornton Room. The agenda today primarily is to go over budget for a number of the general government departments. So before I do that, I just wanted to mention very briefly that there's been a PJ Drive, the Boston Bruins annual pajama drive. Important thing for us to know is that we should donate a pair of new pajamas for kids at any town department or school, including St. Catherine's, and to help Norwood beat Bourne. Now, it's very important. It's beat Bourne this year for the top spot in the Commonwealth. And all PJs will be distributed to children in need by Cradles to Crayons and the Department of Children and Families. So this runs until the 15th, so please do your part. Thank you. With that, let's begin our agenda. The first item, minutes of our February 21st meeting.
I'll move for approval.
Motion made and seconded, discussion, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. The next item, reserve fund transfer requests. Bernie.
Mr. Chairman, this is from the Airport Commission. The total amount is $6,032. The letter that is attached explains it.
Yeah.
This is in place of the smaller reserve fund request that came in last week that you would approve.
You can
So-
actually prove that. I was gonna put it on tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
I never really saw that.
Never, that's right, I didn't see that. The board had approved a different request a week ago, but this is the correct information.
Okay, the amount on the bottom, 6,032, that's the total amount?
That is the total amount.
So
Much
this-
of it's connected to the construction project
Right.
that's ongoing.
All right, so in order to make this whole, that's the amount you're looking for?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Do we have any discussion?
Yes.
David?
Bernie, what I didn't get when this was brought up the other night at the selectmen's meeting was, $2,200 is for snow?
Correct.
Where are they at zero?
The overtime account is essentially at zero currently.
So-
There's one overtime account for all purposes, and essentially it's overdrawn. We haven't actually paid some of the wages that are due from last week.
So the overtime is really the snow account?
The snow account is part of the overtime account. The snow account is used for contractors. This is overtime for the assistant manager.
No, I understand that.
So that's a
That's saying
salary,
that
that's
total
in
is
his overtime.
$2,331.89, which is owed to Mark,
Right.
and that's for overtime.
Correct.
And then it talks about $2,200 to finish out the snow season, so I look at them as two different issues. So I'm wondering,
Finish up the overtime for the snow season.
They're anticipating, you know,
Another snowstorm
they're
tonight.
anticipating that they'll need some additional funds.
So it's all related to overtime.
And then,
Because we met last week, at the airport, and we asked about the snow and ice fund, and their snow and ice fund, I mean, the basic fund is, they said was still okay. But you're saying this is,
If it-
this is a separate item entirely.
Right, if it had not been for the construction overtime, we wouldn't be
All right,
asking for overtime funds at this point.
okay,
so why do we have construction overtime?
It has to do with the construction of the project. The
Yeah.
contractor comes in, needs access to the airport. They come in early, they leave late, he has to stay.
Okay,
It's a high-security area,
yep,
so they
okay.
have to screen everybody that comes in and leaves.
yeah.
Alright.
That can't be charged off to the contractor?
Apparently not, no. If
Okay.
they could have, I'm sure they would have.
Yeah, okay, all right,
Tell him to try,
No,
all right.
you know,
Um,
worth trying.
Do we have any further discussion on this?
No.
Is anyone willing to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve $17,000
going into, from the reserve fund to the airport overtime line.
How much?
$17,000.
No, no,
No,
Do I have the wrong
No,
number?
it's the wrong one.
I probably
6,000.
said It should be 6,032.
Wanna mark it up?
Using the old form. 32, right?
3-2.
Sorry about that.
okay.
Okay, to transfer $6,032 from the reserve fund to airport overtime line.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
thank you.
Before I go any further, I'd just like to recognize Town Manager Tony Mizuko. As people know, he's on a sojourn to Singapore. And lo and behold, 13-hour difference at 7 o'clock in the morning there. Here he is on Skype. His dedication is just breathtaking.
It's a
And
breakfast
welcome,
meeting.
Tony.
Especially given that if it was 7 AM back home, I wouldn't be going to a meeting.
Well, thank you. All right, let's get right into the budget. Why don't we start with the police department? Chief, Officer Grasso, welcome.
Good evening. How are you?
And- Well, thank you. I think it's page 17. Just sort of give us the highlights of your budget and
What
any
page
major
are we
changes. Page 17.
That's the book, or if you look at the handout that I did,
We need to minus out
the first budget.
All right.
So, in the salaries, for the most part, really all of it driven by cost of living adjustments. You'll see the salary work clothing, which was not in the previous budget, is now $15,000. That was a recommendation, I believe, by the town accountant, that because those clothing monies are paid to the employees as opposed to on the police side, we buy items and the bills are paid by the police department, that should be in a salary account. So that's the reason for that move. All of the overtime lines, the only adjustments are cost of living adjustments. You will see down where it says salary tuition allowance. When I got here, and I always thought that this was a little unusual, but our training account, which was called Officer Schools, was a salary account, and that's where all of the training expenses for the department were found. Everything from purchase of ammunition to tuition to if we had to pay overtime to an officer. It's been recommended that we split that out, so about 25% of our training money would be in the salary account. So that's the reason for the drop off there.
Okay.
And then on the incidental side, really, if you run down that list, really the whole page, everything is level
Seems to be pretty
funded.
level, yeah.
The only difference is in vehicle maintenance, and we've struggled with vehicle maintenance. Just we've got a good-sized fleet, and for whatever reason, we've just had issues. We are buying cars now with a longer extended warranty and trying to bring that down. We've sat down with Central Motors several times and gone over the invoices to try to manage that as best we can. And then I just point out that down the bottom, you see really kind of the last line that says training and school. You see that pop up of that 157. That's the 75% of the officer school account moved in from salaries.
Okay, now in terms of the vehicle maintenance, is that a problem you're having with newer or older vehicles or both?
Well, for the most part, our line cars are about 4 years old. We only run them about 4 years, but some of it has to do with that the Chargers just have a lower ground clearance, and we've had damage to the undercarriage in a few times, and they're checking industrial areas, going up on a sidewalk at a crash
Right.
scene and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We've had brakes go and earlier than we thought that they should have, and other maintenance that we thought was just earlier than it should be.
Okay.
Our fleet isn't that old just because it's the nature of the
Right, you
fleet.
just had a lot of hard use.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, so they're on the road, they kind of run 24/7, not every car every time, but that's the nature of them.
Is that sometimes why it's difficult to, maybe judge, when you need maintenance, because a lot of times you simply do it by the number of miles. In these cases, the car just run continually.
Yeah, to have taken into account, right, idling time and the nature of the use and that sort of thing, so it's kind of a moving target. That's why there's a little bit more money in there, and we're just gonna have to manage that.
Okay.
How many cars do you have for replacement?
I want to say we have a fleet of 20, 13 of them are marked, and then we've got a wagon. And then we've got, the deputy chief and I have assigned cars, and then the rest are unmarked units used by detectives.
And how many is that?
The total fleet, I believe, is 20. It's either
Okay.
19 or
Oh,
20.
it's out of the
yeah.
20, okay. And,
If you look in the capital plan, it includes the entire fleet schedule for the police department.
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
I actually wasn't looking for the number of cars in the fleet, but I was, the replacement is, how many cars are you replacing?
Well, replacement is 4.
And, I thought that was moving to the capital? No, you're gonna keep it in?
Moving it to the budget, in the
To the
budget.
budget, okay. I thought it
Right.
had changed again,
Yeah.
but it has not.
I mean, there are some vehicles, not police vehicles, that are going into capital.
Okay,
It's a pretty consistent number. It's a pretty predictable
Right.
Well-
thing. You know, that just with the size of the fleet and the amount of miles and the amount of time that cycling about 4 units every year is going to keep the fleet healthy and where it ought to be.
okay.
That's about what we've been
I
landing.
knew that we had been trying to do 6 for you for a while, and then that got scaled back as things,
Since I've been here, there was 1 year of 5, there was 1 year of 3. The year of 3 didn't work out as well as I hoped it would. I really think that 4 is the magic number for us.
okay.
Yeah. That'll
Alright,
allow
thank
you
you.
to replace your vehicles every 4 years on average.
About
Which is
3,
where
yeah,
you
3 to
wanna
4
be.
depending, 3 to
Yeah.
4 depending on the usage.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of cars that are used by school resource officers during the day, at patrol at night. A lot of the other radio cars are patrol on all 3 shifts. It kind of depends on the usage of the car.
Okay.
But 4, we can manage the fleet with 4 year.
Okay.
Do you think you can manage that? I'm sorry,
Okay.
David.
Okay.
I didn't get my hand up. Can you manage that in your operating budget going forward as opposed to the capital plan?
Oh, yes, it's actually, because it's predictable and consistent, to have it in the budget, I think makes a lot more sense. Just 4 cars in the budget each year, that just makes a lot more sense,
Okay.
I think.
You don't, Mr. Chairman, just to the point, you
Yeah.
don't have the same price volatility with police vehicles as the chief was saying that you do with a DPW vehicle where you might have a $40,000 truck, you might have a $200,000 truck, you might have a $400,000 truck.
Right.
Same thing on the fire side, so the 4 vehicles are built into the operating budget and that shouldn't change. It'll need to go up with the cost of the vehicles annually, but that should be sustainable.
Okay,
Okay.
in terms of, I believe you still have motorcycles, how often are those replaced?
Well, they're obviously seasonal,
Yeah.
they're not replaced very often at all. I think we've only bought 1 motorcycle in the 6.5 years that I've been back, you know, so we kind of, they don't get a lot of use, and
Yeah.
also the number of officers. So at one point in time, we had 4 motorcycle officers, now we just got a couple. So they're not actually getting as much use as they once were.
Okay.
And we look at the mileage and look at the vintage, and also the Harleys last fairly long.
Okay, that's good. David?
Just a couple. The big increase on the motor vehicle replacement, is that because of the warranty, extended warranty? Because it's pretty significant for 4 vehicles, it's about 50 grand.
I think there's something else included in that, well, that just says the fleet.
Right, so the 218, 236 is about 50 grand more than last year. Is that because of the increase in warranty?
No, some of it, there's about 194 that's cars. I think we've priced them out with equipment. And we don't replace all the equipment all the time, but I think we've priced them out in the 48,000 range. About 194 of that is vehicle replacement. We're coming into the 3rd year of a 3-year TASER replacement. So there's TASER money in there too. I want to say that's 23. We replace 20 of the department's 60 TASERs.
Okay. It's also in a 3-year schedule?
Yes, and we just did, you know, they're only good for 5 years, and to replace them all at once, we just thought would have been a big undertaking.
Right.
So we kind of came up with a third of the department over 3 years, and we did
then
patrol
cycle.
first, and then admin last.
Yeah.
And then we'll be 2 years where we don't have to do it, and then we'll have to look at how we do it going forward. But we thought that was more manageable.
All right, good.
And the other one, Mr. Chairman, is on the first page. Are they related to overtime other, the decrease from 2 years ago, and the unpaid holidays increase from 2 years ago? Is there a different accounting that we're using that has made that switch? Because together they're about
Well, the
the same, but I was just wondering why one
Well-
went down by about half and the other went up by,
Well, what
David,
happens-
As we went through the process of converting from year to those were some of the things that we saw in the actual charges to the variety of accounts, and we tried to equalize it out and make it reflect the reality a little bit more.
One of the things you also have with the paid holidays is that there's by contract, officers can take a day off instead of taking a day's pay. So that's why you see the actuals lower than the budget amount. We have to budget enough to cover that. But in reality, as salary-wise, if they take a day off, it saves on the salary. Of course, the other side is that we spend it on the overtime when them taking the day off creates a shift vacancy. So it's that's why I see lower actuals and a higher budget figure.
Okay. All right. Further questions? Hearing none? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good seeing you.
Same here. Chief Maurice?
Evening.
How are you? Welcome.
Thank you.
This is nice, we didn't have to go searching for your page, it was right there.
It was right there, perfect. Similar to the police department, most of our changes in the budget are cost of living increases. I will say that the first line for my salary looks like there's a dramatic increase from FY19. That's due to the fact that Chief Greeley's salary was structured a different way, where he had a salary and he had an education pay, longevity, things of that nature. Town Manager Mizuko and I decided that it would be better to have one single number, and that's why that number reflects
So
that.
essentially, it's the same number, but it is in one column rather than three columns.
Correct, much
Okay.
simpler.
So
Yeah.
what does it include?
Mr. Chairman, you'll see that change in the police budget next year as well.
Okay.
It includes
Salary?
everything for myself, everything, that's it. There's nothing
No
else.
stipends.
Correct.
Yeah, correct, the chief.
Everything is rolled into one figure.
The chief is paid a flat salary, whereas in the past there was a small base salary plus several qualifiers on top of that. So that salary number is all the chief gets compensated for. There's nothing additional and beyond that.
Okay. All right.
The other one is, the next item is the salaries full-time. That includes multiple items. It's the firefighter's salary, it includes the business manager, all four of my dispatches, and the 2 arson investigators stipends. So those figures are represented in the FY20 with the 2.5% cost of living
Does
increase.
that also include the new deputy chief?
It does.
Okay. You know, that kind of administrative arrangement, that's, you know, with the new deputy chief, that tends to be more of a standard in similar sized departments.
It is, and it really is absolutely essential for Norwood Fire, for us going into the future. We have to change the way the organization is structured.
Just, you know, briefly, you know, explain what the responsibilities will be.
The new deputy chief, one of the main items is he's going to be a training officer. He's also going to do some administrative work, you know, relieving me of some of the duties that I have, and will overlap with the current position. So currently, that position takes care of any type of new building, evaluating blueprints, making sure everything is up to code. So both positions will actually overlap each other, so if one is not available, the other will be able to do that function also.
Okay. Right. Good.
And is that person in place yet?
No, he's not. We have an exam that has been registered with civil service, and it will be in May.
Okay, so they'll come on in July probably,
I don't think so.
for the new budget?
The second deputy chief position is budgeted to begin January 1st. We would need to wait until we have the appropriation from town meeting, and then it takes some time to get the position geared up. And deputy chief manager was also retiring in the next year or so, so we're just trying to structure things out to be a little bit more stable. But the budgeted amount is for the person to begin January 1st or thereabouts.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, good.
The overtime dispatch line is, again, cost of living increase, but it's also jumped up a little bit because the overtime is added for accrued vacation for the dispatchers. And similar to that is the substitution account, has the cost of living increase, but it also accounts for any additional vacation that firefighters or officers have accrued themselves.
Okay. While we're on the substitution account, how's that going for this year?
Not as well as I would like. Unfortunately, we've had quite a few injuries, and that has really been hitting that account hard. I think other than that, we've been doing well since I started in September. But unfortunately, we've had that, and we also have had one individual who was away for almost a year with the military.
Okay.
But of course, we fully supported him in doing
Right.
that.
Right, and the injuries, I mean, they've been, looked at and they've been vetted by, was it Cook and Company? or
Correct.
whoever? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
So, I've worked hard to try to get the individuals healed up and back to work. We actually have one, hopefully will be coming back to work within the next few weeks.
Okay.
So are we going to have any extra time, extra money left in any of the other accounts that we can switch maybe at a special?
I don't know, I mean, we'll have to look at that and see how it
Yeah.
goes from here.
Okay.
I can't really project that far forward, but it would be great.
Okay. And may I? One last thing. And I want to thank you. I went to visit the fire station the
Yeah.
other day, last week, and I want to thank you publicly for showing me around, telling me what's going on down there. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, thank you for coming.
Did you go up to the kitchen?
Yes.
Yes, I went too. Thank you very much.
Yes,
you and Chief
Mr.
Brooks.
Dong.
Okay.
They didn't offer any food, though.
No.
And there- and there was a really nice meal being made there,
I
too.
was just happy that they didn't offer
Yeah.
food. Thank you.
If there is an issue with the substitution, we are having a special town meeting, I believe, the end of April.
Okay.
So, if you feel there's a problem, that's probably the time and place to do something about it.
Very good.
Okay.
What,
David.
just to further, is between the substitution, which is showing like a $50,000 increase, and medical services, which is a $20,000 increase, are those related to the year that you're currently having, you just trying to stay ahead of what may continue, hoping maybe it
Correct.
won't and we'll be all right, but?
Yes.
Okay.
We had to go for the additional money with the medical services because it's actually the way it's billed. We unfortunately did have, fortunately for the individual, he had the surgery, but it was very expensive, so we took a big hit on that.
Okay.
The next one, actually, the longevity pay has gone down. We have less than 10 firefighters left in the department that get longevity pay separate from their normal pay. But with the new contract, the other firefighters now have that in their base pay.
Okay.
So that's why it reflects a decrease in that figure.
Okay.
And everything else is a cost of living increase, except for the EMT pay, which also has $50,000 with that. That is contractual. We have additional paramedics on the department that accrue a higher rate of pay, so that cost is reflecting that, and I think in anticipation also of hopefully going to a second ALS ambulance.
So you're talking about the EMT pay or the DFib pay?
EMT.
EMT.
Okay. The-
So we don't presently run two ALS?
We do not.
Okay.
No, we run an ALS and a BLS.
Okay.
But we're working, I'm very positive and hopeful that we will have a second ALS ambulance running in hopefully the next year.
Okay. Good.
So, can I have an explanation of the DFib pay, please?
What that is members of the department who are not an EMT, or
Right.
they're not a paramedic, they have a separate stipend, which is the defibrillator pay.
Yeah.
And their role is they can use the automatic external defibrillators on any of the apparatus, similar to what's here in the town hall.
Okay.
But they do not have an EMT designation.
All right.
And then going down with the operating expenses, everything is pretty much level funded, except we go down to training. You can see that also was increased by the 2.5, but there's an additional $32,000 that was added there. The reason for that is, and I think Town Manager Mizuko has alluded to that when we do training on the department, we're not really able to train as a whole crew. Oftentimes, the ambulances get called out, the engine, whatever truck it may be, so our
Yeah.
training is constantly being broken up. The $22,000 is there so we can call members in, and then have the crews that are on duty train but uninterrupted, which is very important to have that
Yeah, the
sometimes.
teamwork.
Exactly. You know, to have trucks go out and then come back, sometimes they're missing part of the training, or then they don't even get it because they have to go out again, especially the ambulances.
Okay.
So this is a way for us to really keep the members together and train
Yeah,
together.
is this gonna be an annual expense?
It is.
Okay.
The other part of that $32,000 is $10,000, which was put in there for officers' meetings. In the past, we've only had one a year or one every 2 years. It's a very important thing to me to have my offices where we are communicating together as a group and setting the goals and standards for the department. And have,
You're referring to your command staff?
Yes.
Okay.
exactly, which is made up of the deputy chief, the captains, and the lieutenants. Those are the officers on the department. So it's really a managerial administrative method for us to all be on the same page.
Okay.
Do you bring somebody in to do this? Do you go outside to do this? How does that
We
work?
go outside, actually, we went to the room in the police, on the police station, the community
Okay.
room, and my first officers meeting was there.
Okay.
But, no, I meant
In-
is, do you have somebody come in to help you with training?
Well, what I've done, which on my first one, was I had Bill Sullivan from Cook and Company come in, and he
Okay.
actually trained everybody on how we should be handling IODs, the proper method for the paperwork to submit it, for the individuals getting injured, and then what we have to do after that to correctly manage
Oh, good,
injury on duty.
okay,
Alright.
In the past, that has not been the case.
All right.
great.
Anything further?
And I believe that's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Questions?
No.
Hearing none?
Thank you.
Hearing none?
Chief,
Thank you.
you have one item that was approved last year. Was it an ambulance or a fire truck? What's the status of that?
That is for an engine. The status is that we have ordered that engine. I think I spoke about it at a selectmen's meeting. The engine committee worked very hard to get the specs in before the first of the year, so we would not have the increase from the steel tariffs. So we were able to come in at the number we were looking at. That is currently starting to be built. I'm sending 3 individuals down in 2 weeks' time to actually do what's called a pre-build. And they're gonna meet with the manufacturer, and they're gonna go over the actual beginning stages of the engine and how it's built, and if there's any changes that need to be made to that. We will not see that engine for quite a while, though. It's not gonna be here within this fiscal year. Hopefully, late fall, early winter.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's see what's next up. Town clerk? Town clerk Folin, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm there.
Hi, how are you?
Okay. We are on page 10.
So basically, just a little change in the salaries. All the salaries, the staff member that I had that was in election and registration got moved into the town clerk's
Okay.
this year. So all the salaries are coming out of the town clerk's salary, out of the town clerk's budget.
Okay.
Okay? And the other, the salaries in election and registration is basically for the voter registrars.
Okay.
And the election workers have been moved into the salaries account.
So
They're
everything
gonna get
else-
paid.
yeah, everything
Right.
else looks to be level funded.
Yeah, it is,
Okay.
yeah, basically.
Alright.
Okay?
I have a question outside the budget, but any questions on the budget?
The $4,000 in overtime under town.
That got
town
moved
clerk?
in from, we took that from election registration and just, we put it all into town clerks. It's mostly, a lot of times, it's for elections, it's for town meetings, and, anytime my staff works overtime if we need it and stuff.
Okay, good.
Or overtime. Most of it's, everything's into the town clerk salaries.
David?
Just out of curiosity, Mary Lou, under training, nothing this current year and nothing projected? Most of the other departments
No,
have something?
no, yeah, there's not too much. I mean, we go to conferences and stuff, but there's not a lot of training that,
Okay.
we get a lot of it just from the town clerk conferences and stuff. A lot of the
Okay.
mass general laws we update and stuff like that,
Gotcha, okay.
yeah.
All right, Bob.
It's probably more for Bernie and Tony, but is the fire department the only department that the agreements call for longevity being built into base pay? So that wouldn't be applicable to other departments?
We have longevity,
And
I have
that's
2
separate
staff
from
members.
base pay.
It's a
Yeah.
percentage in some departments.
Okay,
After a certain period, so the practice differs.
okay.
All right, good, all right. Question I have is, it's not on your budget, but special town meeting, whether you're gonna have to put an item forward
I
for the election
anticipate.
of override election.
Right.
Okay.
I'm not sure, I'm trying to kind of do a little bit of a analysis
What
of
it's
where
gonna
I'm gonna
cost
be,
you,
yeah. I'm
right.
trying to, I'll know better like after the April election, but hopefully I'll have something together. It might be between 25 or 30,000.
That's what-
Hopefully it's not gonna be that much,
That's
but,
what we thought,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Hopefully it's not gonna be that much,
All right,
but
but you'll
I
have-
was
you-
kinda
you
trying
have
to do a
something
little
there,
bit, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Good.
I'm
Okay.
trying to do a little bit of an analysis ahead of time. I kinda went by what we did last year, but of course everything's going up and
Yeah, who knows,
more
yeah.
ballots and stuff like that.
Okay,
All right?
good. Any further questions?
Thank you, Mary Lou.
Okay,
All right, thank you. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Mary Lou. You guys let off a little too easily.
He's waiting for room service.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Board of Health, Sigal.
And Chairman Jim Jacobs is here also.
Okay, Joan?
Did you want me to come up there?
Let's see where we are.
Thank you.
40.
Okay. All right, so everything looks to be pretty much just, similar to last year, just, COLAs and whatever.
Yeah, two major changes in the operating expenses. The increase in hazardous waste really is for level services to maintain the 2 hazardous waste days and the recycling calendar. You can see the actuals for FY18 were above budget, and actually in FY17, DPW bailed me out a little. So those costs are definitely been rising. So I think the 55,000 should be able to provide that level service. And then there was some cost savings when we switched to the contracted dental service program.
Okay.
So that number has actually been decreased to reflect those savings that we've seen.
Okay.
And besides that, like you said, everything else is pretty level with the COLAs on the salaries.
Okay. All right, I noticed the kennel expenses, that's because the animal control officer is under your control?
Correct.
Like
So those budgets were
Yeah.
merged.
Yeah, okay.
And is his budget, is his salary up here in your salaries?
Yep, so his salary is included in the full-time salaries, and then the substitution pay is what the part-time salaries is.
Right.
And then some other stipends and other ACO expenses in the salary line items too.
Okay. All right. David?
So now the impact, no, as we, over time, transition to where we sort of take on, where would that show in here?
I think that could be a discussion. It doesn't show anywhere in here right now because it's all grant funded at this
Right.
point. In the second half of the grant, years 6 through 10, we will have to have double match. Right now, we just match in kind
Yes.
to the $125,000 a year. In the years 6 through 10, we'll have to match $250,000. That's where I do possibly see some salaries being transitioned into the operating budget of the health department, and in addition to the grant. But that's something we have to plan when we apply for years 6 through 10.
Thank you.
All right. Further questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
That was easy. Maybe.
We'll get
Yeah.
back to you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Book.
All right, next on tap is town assessor. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board,
Mr. Thorne?
Mr. Manager,
I tried to save you from coming in, guys, but
Yeah. Let's-
I always enjoy seeing my friends on the Finance Commission.
Okay.
You're off to a good start.
You know, whenever I have these meetings and sit where I am, I'm always facing the picture of Bob Thornton, and now here he is
We are
in the flesh.
in the Thornton room, in person.
In the Thornton room.
Love what you've done with the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spruced it up.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how much I miss this. Oh, my favorite time of year.
As we know,
Yeah.
as we know. All right,
So, Mr. Chairman, there's pretty much, the only change in our budget has been the decrease due to the measure and list.
all right.
You know, which is still underway, and will be for the next few months, of people going door to door, trying to measure and list every property, commercial, residential, in town, to, the goal is to actually to pick up new growth,
All right,
to
and
find, you know, a deck that wasn't here before, or a
right,
porch,
something
or,
that
yep.
somebody did without telling the
Without,
building inspector, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's ongoing. Otherwise, the budget is pretty much level funded with the exception of COLA increases that we have. And I'll leave it at that, but we have, Mr. Thornton and the board, we've kind of worked, with some things we just want to, if you want me to hand them out, Bob, and you can kind of explain.
Okay, can I, before
Yep.
you get into that,
Sure.
I have a question on the reeval. Where are you as far as how much, I
Two?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, as far as how many, where are they right now?
Yeah.
They're at approximately 45% of the town.
And when does it need to be finished?
Not till December. So they'll be working ongoing. So the initial phase is to go out and look at and measure every property that they can. Then they will go back and attempt to gain access for the properties that they couldn't. They'll send a letter and try and schedule appointments. And they're very happy with the response that they've received from the company Vision. They said that normally their acceptance is about 20%. And they said they're finding out like about approximately 50% of the people in Norwood are letting people in. And I think that was because we did a lot of education beforehand on social media and the town's website, letting people knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
And I still will get one or two calls a week from people saying, all right, somebody came to my house, are they, you know, is it legit? And I'll explain to them, they have IDs, and they should identify themselves properly. But they've been very happy with the response from the public, which is a great thing.
So are they working in specific, and what I'm trying to get at is, are they working in specific parts of the town, and where are they moving to next?
Right
So that
now,
people
we
will
have,
go?
yep, right now, we have 5 individuals doing, like, one will take a district, say,
Okay.
and work that entire district, go up and down the streets. And they've been pretty much covering all aspects of town,
Okay,
so.
Okay.
thank you.
And do you
You're
remember the
welcome.
old Dobie Gillis show?
That was before me, Mr.
Maynard G.
Chairman.
Krebs? Maynard G. Krebs.
Maynard G. Krebs,
That's
right,
right.
that whenever the town assessor was gonna come to Mr. Gillis's house, he would just, he knew in advance for whatever, he would just make the thing look like a mess.
Garbage,
Yeah,
yeah.
garbage, just so they would give him a low assessment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and the whole point, as I said many times, it's not necessarily, and a lot of people are like, oh, is it gonna drive up my assessment? It's not, that's not the purpose. The purpose is to make sure that the information we have is correct. And for example, I had a gentleman in and he said, I haven't had a pool in my backyard for 5 years. And I said, well, did you take out a permit to remove it? No, I don't have to do that. I said, well, how would I know that you
Right.
no longer have the pool?
right,
So,
and he's
well,
getting a higher assessment because.
because of
he has
it,
a pool,
and he
so
said,
it
now
costs
can
him
I
more
go,
tax money.
and can I go back and get my money back. And I said, no, you can't. You, there's a defined time to do
Yeah.
that, so.
Okay. All right. Sorry for digressing.
No, that's all right,
It
and
was-
Mr. Thornton might be able to just kind of give you, this is just I mean, unless there's other questions from the board, you can answer.
All right, so, Mr. Chairman, Board of Assessors is responsible for doing a number of things according to Mass General laws, primarily probably of which is valuation work that Tim was just talking about. Also, do work in the area of classification, you know, between when we have a hearing with the Board of Selectmen, which we just did. And that classification is regarding the split between commercial, industrial, and residential. Also get involved with the overlay and trying to, by law, and trying to make sure that we have an adequate overlay. And if there's any surplus, it goes back to the town. If there's any deficit, we raise that on the following year's tax rate recap sheet. And speaking of recap sheets, the recap sheet is another area where the assessors are responsible for overseeing it, along with the assistance of a bunch of other department heads, you know, town accountants involved, treasurer, assessor, and so forth.
Yeah, that's
And the
one
clerk.
That's the one that's sent to the state.
DOR, yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can't send out tax bills without that recap being reviewed by them and approved, right? So, and then the last area, big one, is abatement. So, but regarding, so tonight, the budget, as Tim said, really didn't change a lot, but in terms of some of the other areas that we mentioned, this handout just shows, you know, one of the things that, you know, I think has come up recently regarding the many discussions you guys have all had with, regarding, you know, where we're going and what kind of town do we want to be, and possible override and so forth. You know, the issue has come up about, you know, service cuts and, you know, are we, have we been cutting, or what kind of product do we have, and have we been, you know, cutting services and so forth. And not that this is a measurement of that, but one of the things this first page shows is this. This is value data, and it's right out of our the Gateway website. You guys have access to that. You can get that through DOR, right? It's got a lot of good stuff on there. But basically, if you look at this, the top piece here just shows, all you gotta do is eyeball it, and you can see. And I've heard Tony mention this a bunch, and he, you know, he's right in pointing this out, that, you know, the economy can impact a lot of things. And this is kind of, you know, this shows that a little bit, these first two graphs here, that, you know, basically, you look at the beginning of the last decade, this shows the last 10 years of values. Residential's in yellow, and the CIP is commercial, industrial, personal properties in blue. But if you just look at this picture, picture's worth 1,000 words, you know, it shows me that beginning of the decade, things were kind of flat. And, you know, residential really wasn't going anywhere, commercial, industrial was holding steady. And then in the last 5 years, you know, the recession kind of scaled back. We kind of started to pull out of it. But what this shows is that the values have been, first of all, they've been steady. There's not like a, you know, I think if there was a mass flight because people were, you know, angered with the lack of services or the like, you know, you would probably see that shown in your values plummeting. You know, we haven't seen that here. They've held steady in spite of the recession. And now, as you can see here, there's been a steady uptick in the last 5 years, residential going from and this is millions, by the way. So like 2015 in yellow, it's 3 billion, 81 million, and so forth. So we've gone from 3 billion, $81 million in value for residential in 15 up to $3.8 billion in 2019. So there's a nice upward trend there, right?
About a 25% increase.
Right.
Plus or minus over that period.
So we want to give you this because, again, a lot of people are talking about this now, obviously, and, you know, you guys have a tough job to do, but this shows you that things have been holding steady. You look at how does that translate, the bottom piece of the first page just adds those two together, and this is your total value in millions. So again, going from in 2015, 4.3 billion, up to 4.7 to 4.9 to 5.1 to 5.3. So again, from the town standpoint, and where you all sit, pretty positive trend. The next page, I mentioned when we go to set the rate, and you guys deal with this, when you're trying to figure out how much you have for tax revenues, the easy piece is the 2.5% growth of, I mean, the 2.5% increase set by statute. And then this is the unknown, this is the wild card, which is this next page, and it's new growth. And what this shows me, again, just pulling yourself away from it, looking at the big picture, is this. This is the last decade. The bars in blue show you that 8 out of the last 10 years, the average is 875,000. 875, 900. We had somewhat of an anomaly in 2017 and 18, where, I mean, it's a nice one, but the new growth went up to a 1.1 million and 1.2 million.
In that particular, over that time frame, it's important to note that, so you had Benchmark came on from raw land to, an assisted living. You had Upland Woods, the apartments were built. You had probably 24 to maybe 3 dozen condos down on Endicott Woods. And you had 2 new car dealerships, Herb Chambers, that went from raw land to car dealerships. So, over that time, which were big projects, they weren't, they were one-time, like, upkicks. So that kind of tries to explain the anomaly of why it jumped so high over those couple of
Okay,
years.
and in the other years, you'd say it's been pretty constant, I mean, the type of new growth that we've had.
Yeah, there's not, I mean, we're gonna have Avalon Bay coming on, at least a percentage of it.
Yeah.
Depending upon how complete they get by June 30th. But there's not a lot of land left, so there's not, we also, part of that was also Sop Circle down off of Ellis Ave, where we had about a dozen new homes. Yeah, so all that combined made for kind of an anomaly that made it jump very big. But right now, the biggest thing that's probably coming down the pike is Avalon, the old Plimpton Press.
Yeah, and then potentially something maybe at Forbes.
Yeah, which won't be for this
Couple
fiscal
weeks,
year,
yeah.
yeah.
And then the condos that you speak in Cannons,
They came on last year.
last year?
Yep.
Okay.
So, that's that piece. The other piece that I'll hand out to you as well is, this is something to do with, when we had every year, as I mentioned at the beginning, what some of the responsibilities that we have to offer the classification and have a tax rate hearing with the selectmen, which this document here, which I didn't make for you, but this is a copy of the PowerPoint that we did that night, and it's a pretty extensive hearing. And this here, all this is showing here is, one of the things is people ask, well, what is like at that hearing, what are we doing with the levy? And what kind of percentage changes it so people can look at their tax bills and so forth? So basically, as you see here, the top piece of this is just a recap of what we've had for total tax levy, change in the levy, percentage changes in red, and that's through this year. And then I've heard a bunch of, there seems to be some, I won't say confusion, but, when people are trying to say, well, okay, if the override is successful, and right now it is at, what, 5.9? 5.9. Right, so if 5.9 is successful, what does that mean to the levy? So just today, I saw that somebody put something on the town website with some package about what the override would be, and this was right from your package, which if successful, then not only would you have the 5.9, but you'd also have the normal 2.5% plus new growth. So the levy that you guys are projecting, if successful, would be an increase of $8,851,340.
But town meeting
Right
is
here.
not obligated to authorize expenditures after that levy.
Understood. I'm just
But
saying,
So if, it could be approved, but if the budget approved by town meeting only does $4 million of that, then.
Right, and you know what, and this is uncharted water, obviously, for you guys, for everybody, right? And so, but yet, what's out there is, normally you're gonna get your 2.5%, you're gonna get your new growth, right? Which is gonna translate to something like this, 2.7 million. And then when you add 6 on top of that, and again, it has to be done by the voters and by town meeting. That's your exposure. And if successful, because some people are saying, well, is it 8%? Is it? So that's this picture here, and you're right, it would have to go to them. But that's that.
Okay.
And are you guys, you backed up for time?
We've got a little time if,
Well, we have people waiting.
No, you do, okay.
and we have a few minutes if you.
No, I just, something that I throw out here to you, because, first of all, I guess just from I know that the schools, people are asking questions with the override and trying to get information out there, so I would imagine the election's not until June. And I'm sure there's gonna be a ton of stuff that will be forthcoming, right? But so far, this, I said, I saw something on there today, which was, was helpful. But one of the areas that my opinion, and I just throw it out to you while you're here, because you guys, has the FinCom taken a position?
We haven't taken a vote yet.
Okay,
We will
yeah.
before the town election in April, but we haven't done one yet.
Okay, because what you have to do is, obviously, you're gonna take a position with your town meeting votes. And I understand, what the debate has been. There seems to be, a shift in some thinking, and that's fine. That's what makes the world go round, I guess. But one of the things that I just want to throw out to you all because you're gonna have to vote on it, is this, and I know you've talked about it, but I want to give you something, not for tonight, but just to think about. And it's this, I think that it may not be misinformation, it may be a misunderstanding, it may be nothing other than just a difference, and which is fine. But this thing here, it came up actually at the meeting, the Budget Balancing Committee. Yes, here, take all these in. I don't know how many people would be here, but it came up at the hearing, Alan, that you chaired, with the selectmen.
Yeah.
And what came out of that was this, is that, and I know it came up subsequently at a school committee meeting, and that is the concept of, any use whatsoever of free cash. And I know that, you guys your goal is to have zero, and that's, I get it, I think it's a noble gesture and ideal. But one thing I want to make sure that you understand, because this was the quote that came out that night, not from you guys, but from the other side of the table, that if you go on Department of Revenue website and you go to look at tax rate recap sheets, that Norwood is an anomaly for how we do business. Couldn't disagree more. And what was said was that it's a sign of ill health to be using free cash towards balancing a budget. Or not towards balancing a budget, but towards a budget. And I think the misunderstanding is that we use this because it's a structural deficit, and we need it to balance a budget. And I think that's the disconnect. The budget here is $200 million nowadays, 190.
Yeah,
Call
a
it
little, like, there's 190,
Two,
195.
round it up to 200 million,
Yeah.
okay? Putting things in perspective, what the town has used, and it sounds like, it's like, oh my God, this is a new phenomenon, and I was here for close to 40 years. Every one of those years. And again, not to say you want to try to strive away from doing that, that's great, I get it. But the thing is this, we were using $2 million out of a $200 million budget. It's 1%, okay? So keeping that, and that's just towards defraying costs of the budget. The thing I want you to understand is this, really not a sign of ill health. It's great if you don't use any, but take your time. This here is a recap of what is on the tax rate recap sheets. These are the towns that are in your book, from the towns that we surround, that are our neighbors. And if you look over in the right-hand column, These are AAA, AA plus. And where you use free cash, here's what I think is a different understanding of what we use in this room for all these years. It shows up in two places. Page 1 is a catch-all. If you want, page 1 of the recap sheet, if you want to just throw a number out there, it used to be Article 7 of the town meeting. And that's if you just want to put it in one place. Other towns don't put it on page 1. It shows up on page 4. And I gave you a backup to show you that. Page 4 was where, at annual town meetings, they do it all the time to use it to raise money from free cash towards stabilization fund. They use it for health insurance. They use it for a million different reasons. But what I want you to know, and you can go verify this, these documents here, these are copies of the recap sheets to show you where the numbers came from. And for example, I highlighted Medway, AAA Community. They use $2,165,231 out of free cash. Go to page A, next to it, there it is. So, and what do they use it for? What do these towns use it for? It may not be for, no, it has it in one place, as I say. You look at page E, attached. Here's Canton, AAA Community. $722,000 to offset the cost of health insurance. So it's not to reduce the rate, but it's there. And I think that if you look at this document, and you keep going. Another one is Milton. They use money towards offsetting the school budget out of free cash. Lastly, Milton, $200,000 for stabilization. So my point is, if you go back and look, Mr. Chairman, these towns are right, these are the towns we compare ourselves to. Last year in FY19, the statement was made at your meeting, 19 out of 23 towns don't use free cash. Totally false. These are the towns, and you go look it up on the internet, and what I'm seeing here is that these towns are what we compare ourselves to. They used $2.2 million out of free cash last year for various purposes at their annual. Norwood used 2.1. And right now, you can certainly have that as your objective, but for the last 40 years that we've done it, and the last thing I'll show you is this, in terms of, this is the last subject, and then I shut up. Thank you. This thing here, sorry. This shows you, like, in other words, there was some discussion about, well, this is a recent phenomenon, and it's not gonna last forever. This goes back to, this is your last 10 years, and if you look at the recap sheets for the town of Norwood. Page 1, here's how much we had there. Page 4, out of free cash at the annual. And the total for those two purposes, page 1 and page 4, is what you see. $1,000,009, $2,000,004, $1,000,005, $1,000,004, $1,000,003, et cetera. And that's for the annual, right here. Alan?
Yeah,
Over here,
special.
specials. So if you look at the bottom chart, you know, again, it sounds like we're a destitute town, and what we're doing is we're just balancing, we're out of structure, and we're using this, and we can't survive. It's really, I can't get it. And it's okay, I get the fact that you want to try to get away from it. But these are the funds, the town of Norwood has used all this money here in the last 10 years, and now it's like, it's sacrosanct, can't do it. And I hope you're successful in getting what you want, but you know, these numbers don't substantiate the public comment about it.
Yeah, I mean, my theory on free cash is not that we shouldn't use free cash. I would prefer to use it for some of the things that we borrowed over the years, the 5-year type of, equipment.
Sure.
And if you don't borrow on that, if you use free cash for that, don't borrow for that, you save an interest, essentially, that saves an equivalent amount of money on your overall operating budget. So in the end, to me, it makes, it's like a wash.
Right, but Alan, I'm glad you mentioned that, because here's the thing. First of all, before I get off it, the amount of other reserves, keeping it in perspective again, the amount of other reserves, go to the internet, go to Gateway, other reserves on page 4, used by the town of Norwood during its fiscal year for other purposes, 5.3, 5.0, 5.4, 6 million, 7 million, et cetera. This is a drop in the bucket, what we're talking about here. It's immaterial. And you look at these charts here at the bottom, this shows you what we've been doing. So I guess the last thing you said, which I think is been kind of the problem this year. People say, the reason why we've got this issue is because free cash is so low. And it only came in at 1.7. And you just said something very important. The reason, what we should be doing is using free cash for the things that only last for 5 years or small ticket items. But the decision was made to take $1.7 million out of free cash in May, right before the end of the year. And if we had borrowed for that, it's a 20-year lived asset probably. Best practice is not to take that out of the bank. It's to borrow. And so we took $1.7 million out of free cash for that purpose, for something that's gonna last us 20 years. And it got certified at $1.7 million. What it should have been is 3.4, and we're not even having the discussion today. So that, to me, it's unfortunate. It happened, it is what it is, and I'm glad you got the new software. But the ramifications of taking that out of the bank right at the end of the year, it would have been in this year's free cash. You'd been at $3.4 million. You had a $4 million budget problem, done. Not done. There was some things to do. Now you get $1.3 million more in state aid. And a couple of things. Circuit breaker is another one. I see that came up. So I know you guys are working at it, but what we're gonna have to do when we get into the tax rate hearing is to incorporate all this stuff in. And I figured while we're here, we'd throw that out to you.
No, this is very useful. Thank you. Questions for Timmy and Bob? Anything further?
Just, who are our largest taxpayers? Who are the big players for?
The biggest taxpayer right now is Windsor Gardens, followed secondly by, individual, or you're talking?
Looking mostly commercial.
Mostly, yeah, commercial, Boston Gas, Stewart, Norwood Hospital. Those are pretty much the top 3 to 5, and consistently the same. But yeah, Windsor Gardens is the biggest one.
I know it's difficult, because we have no idea what's going on here, but any way to give even a rough guesstimate of what kind of taxes we get if we wind up selling Forbes Hill? It used to be, I think it was like 260 something before.
Yeah, we had it was a big loss to us. That, obviously, that hurt us on new growth to lose that, tax coming in. So depending upon what goes in there and depending upon what they build, you're looking at, Mr. Schubert would be involved, as far as building permits. If they put in, I know one of the discussions about a potential medical complex. So you add in the building permits, then the new tax, and then the use of the property. It's definitely a win-win. So the sooner we can get it done, the better. Obviously.
No question.
Yeah.
All right. Any further questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have one last one for you and maybe for Mr. McCoy. I noticed at the last, I think it was a selectmen's budget hearing, it was one of those ones just recently. There's a discussion about allocating costs out of general government over to the light department.
Yes.
Okay, so question is on that. So it's like 350,000 for.
439,000.
I'm sorry.
439,000.
439.
I believe so.
Okay, and I guess my question was, yeah, 340, 350,
sorry.
yeah, that's okay. So it's 350,000 round number, but it was mainly for salaries, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Accounting, treasury, managers, town council, right? So I guess, and the idea is that it would come out of the budget to reduce the budget and go over to the light department? And then you'd be able to offset those costs with fees and not have the chapter 164 constraints of profit making?
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to mention that to you guys because that's gonna come down here to balance your budget.
Yeah.
So here's the question. Is it possible, since we're allocating costs, what about health insurance and pensions, which are the big ticket items, because they certainly, I mean, what we used to do was look at, when we were concerned about making too much of a profit, we would always do that offline and say, well, we're really not making that much profit because 30% of our health insurance number is really from light department employees and retirees. So we would do it on a spreadsheet. But I saw that and I said, well, geez, if you're doing that, and it's not, you know, it's a good idea if you can do it, then you're gonna go enterprise fund. But if you're throwing salaries over there and the light department's gonna raise it on their budget and raise fees, which they can do legally to cover that, could we do pensions and health insurance? I would think.
I think long-term, that's the plan.
Right, if
Actually,
the-
yeah,
Right, it's,
The new financial policies.
With the light department accounts was that we move in that direction, but do it over the course of 3 to 4 years, so that each year you're picking one sort of segment and moving it over and making it sort of a clean break. So this year it was sort of the direct salaries, and I agree, Bob, it's the salary count. I mean, is it a portion of my salaries, a portion of my office cost? You know, 6 one way, half dozen the other way. Next year we probably look at some of those benefit costs, shift those over, and then in the course of the 3rd year, if there's any net remaining, we would do that. We'll need to do it with broadband at some point as well, but broadband is obviously a much smaller number. But the recommendation was spread out the increase, spread out the time you take to do it, and just do it in a concentrated manner, because the DPU also monitors sort of what we're doing, and we want to be able to explain what we're doing. And added to that, the complexity of potential override calculations combined with switching accounting softwares. There's only so much we can get done in one given year.
Right, I guess the thought was just that, however, that this is, you know, again, if the override is successful, different ballgame. But, you know, this is, you know, I saw the concept of what was going on, and I said, well, you know, that's good. Move those costs out of there, raise light fees to recover those. But that is the tip of the iceberg with other costs in health insurance and retirement. Big money, this is small money.
OPEB is one of the
Yeah.
things also that
Yeah.
would be included, you know.
Right now, that's small though, Alan,
Well, I
yeah.
think it's small out,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but isn't the intent to, you know, with us so-called enterprise funds to have them the next year or so account for their potential future OPEB liability?
Well, to begin doing that,
Right,
yes.
right.
To make sure that they're sort of making a direct allocation, but also to smooth out that rate increase, you do it over the course of a couple of years. I mean, I'd love next year to say, boom, have them account for 100% of their direct OPEB and what their contribution should be, but then you would see a rate increase that would be quite enormous.
I get that, right, so that, you gotta measure the two out.
So-
Okay.
Yeah, so we're moving that direction,
wanna-
100% right. We're just trying to meter it out and only do so much in a given fiscal
Gotcha.
year.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
David first, then Ann.
Didn't know we were getting on the subject, but specific to the light. I
We will
guess
be
the-
meeting with the light department.
But this change, is it only now gonna benefit general government, so there's no impact to the schools at all? Because this seems to have, made a significant impact to general government, because now they have the ability to, make up those dollars by having additional light fees to cover that. Are the schools now gonna come back and say, well, should this affect them in some way?
So remember, one of the challenges is that we can only move legitimate expenses over to the light department that are light department expenses. If I could pick up Superintendent Thompson's salary in the light department, I'm sure we would, but it's a different kind of superintendent that we have over there. So I think as some of those shared costs are moved in time, and those numbers are a little bit more difficult to calculate, you'll see some benefit to sort of the shared cost formula. But remember, I can't book school department costs on the light department, and when you're creating an enterprise fund or moving to an enterprise fund light system, I can only have things in there that we can legitimately tie to the light department. Again, I'd love to put playgrounds in there, I'd love to, you know.
No, that's not
tie
what
the
he
light
meant.
department, but
That's,
it's,
it's not really my
you know, it's
question.
legitimate expenses that we're
I get your
incurring on
question.
behalf of the
I
government.
get it.
So for anyone watching at home, the best example is out of the treasurer's office. It's funded by general government. The treasurer collects the light fees, so they need to pay for the portion of the light department service, the service they're providing to the light department. Wish we could do that with more education costs, but wouldn't pass the smell test.
No, I wasn't specifically, probably didn't ask the question the right way, but I wasn't asking if the light department could pick up any of the educational salary. My question is, does the impact of moving to an enterprise fund at the light department, where they are now picking up dollars expense dollars from general government. Will that, after the net of it, have any effect on the revenue split for the schools? Because they're gonna say, how come general
One
government,
minute, Tony.
how come general government
Please.
somehow, whatever the number was, 349,000 got shifted? So, and then that is made up from fees to get those dollars.
But those are not, those are light department fees, they're not 45% related fees. It's, you know, I understand that, but, you know, what we're talking about is taking expenses that were solely general government expenses, and transferring them, you know, legitimately
Which I
over the
agree
light
with.
department,
I
which is
agree.
fine, but, you know, it's like a similar argument as like saying that the school department got an extra $250,000 of circuit breaker funds, as an example. You know, should that somehow, you know, should we use some kind of accounting measure to try to account 55-45 for that? We don't, and I think this is the same principle here.
Good, okay. Good.
Okay?
Okay.
Ann?
I'm a little troubled by discussing this actually here without the light department here, first of all. Second of all, you raise taxes or you raise fees. And one of the things that I had talked earlier about to the light department was that I didn't want to see fees for the light department going up because we had promised the ratepayers years ago that when we got through paying off some of our debt for the for one of the suits that we had, that we would not raise fees, that we would sort of roll that back so that they would stay neutral. And I sat through, and you sat there with me, many a discussion about this. So I just want to remind people that we do owe the ratepayers money. We owe them because there was promises made to them. And yeah, I got it, Bob. I understand the difference between moving something to rates instead of taxation and the rate of the taxation going up and all that sort of thing. But there is still another piece to this puzzle that has to be discussed, and it should be discussed with the light department.
Okay,
Okay?
all right.
Thank you.
Anything further? All right, with that, thank you, and before
Thank-
you leave, Bob, again, thank you for this. I know it took a lot of work to do, it's gonna be very useful, but thank you.
No, it's, you guys are doing the work.
Yeah.
You are. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you, Tim, thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Tony.
Nice to see you guys.
Thanks, guys, we'll see you.
Thank you.
All right.
May I enter?
Yes, you may. You have a tough act to follow.
That's for sure. Hopefully this is a little simplistic as opposed to that.
All right, so on page 21, I believe. Now, I always like having you here because you always make money.
Well, we tried.
Okay, we're on page 21. Looks like your accounts are pretty much level, other than COLAs.
COLAs, and actually there's been a little slight deduction on their expenses.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, training, I see, yeah.
Correct. I do, be nice, David. So
Yeah, what can you learn? You know everything, right?
Be nice, be
I
nice,
am.
be nice. So I have a copy of that's gonna be part of the town
meeting.
report
Good, thank you.
that reflects revenue from calendar year last year.
Thank you. I'll put it too. Thank you.
And I also have a report of this fiscal, as of the fiscal year we're in right now, that reflects
Right.
almost the same amount of revenue.
Good, thank you.
But it's so difficult to project, you know? Mr. Thornton, I love him. I would always be, oh, I'm sorry. I would always be extremely conservative in my guesstimates, because Bobby's a lot bigger than me, and I didn't want him to attack me in the corridor someday. So, again, I reflect on the conservative side, that number's probably, hopefully a lot lower than it's going to be by the end of the fiscal year in terms of revenue. We do have a couple of, and I apologize, I've been busy with all my annual inspections along with my assistant, so I typically spend more time trying to project what's on the horizon. You want to?
Yeah, this is for calendar year 2018.
This is for,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
one,
This
Mr.
one,
Chairman?
that's 2018, okay, calendar.
Okay, yeah, calendar year, which,
Right,
that'll be
okay,
part of
that's
the,
known, okay.
the town report.
Right,
The other one reflects as of July 1st, to
Okay.
today's date,
okay.
the amount of revenue.
Okay.
And they almost,
So they're,
they're almost the same, and we've
Close.
still got, yeah, and we still have 4 months left in this
All right,
fiscal
that's
year.
good.
The third document I just gave you just illustrates a couple of major projects that we know are coming on board. I'm sure there's more. Unfortunately, I just haven't had the time the last week or two to kind of scramble and place the calls I normally do, but, you know, things are pretty busy. I would assume we're gonna generate, you know, a fair amount of revenue.
Okay. I mean, if we get, you know, a couple of big projects in FY '20, would you see the number being greater than?
Absolutely.
What we typical have? I mean,
But it's so difficult to project, you know?
right. I mean, you know, I've been talking to a couple of people about Forbes Hill. I mean, it's difficult to predict, you know, I talked to Timmy about, you know, what the assessment would be and what the potential taxes would
Sure.
be. And, yeah, again,
Sure.
it's tough to tell, but it would certainly be something well into the six figures, likely for, as a building building fee,
No question.
yeah.
But I'd rather be conservative
Right.
than have to go back and explain why we didn't generate the amount of revenue that I suggested we were gonna generate, so.
Yeah, you want to be before us again. for that
Exactly.
reason.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
If I can just-
Sure.
You know, I've been around talking to different developers about projects, either recent, past, completed, or trying to come up with something. And they've all had nothing but admiration and thanks to you and your team. I've never heard a complaint about any one of your team members. They're always very professional, knowledgeable, timely, and everything. So I appreciate that, not just as a finance commissioner, but as a town meeting member, taxpayer, that we have a really, really good building inspection department, building commission department. It's, in my opinion, unbelievable compared to some of the other towns I visit and hear that some people are really, you know, jerks when they're meeting people, but not this team, so thank you.
I appreciate that. It's called public service 101, you know, it's not that difficult, but
Well, let me, I'm curious about, what is an annual building versus a building? Is it just, you know, maintenance related work that you have to do to make sure that certain things are consistent with codes?
okay, an annual building would be the annual inspections that we perform
Yeah.
on any place of assembly, which is an occupant load of 50 or more.
Okay.
So for instance, that's all the public schools. As a matter of fact, I spent some quality time with Mr. Riccardi this morning, and we toured all the public schools, and, you know, that's my due diligence. It's required by statute. We check emergency lights, we check exits, we make sure there's nothing unusual going on in all the schools. We also do all the, actually, my assistant, Matt Walsh, does all the joint Chapter 304 inspections, which after the Warwick
Sure.
disaster down there where 100 people lost their lives, there's state law now that requires the jointly for the fire department and the building department to inspect any place that has a liquor license.
Okay.
So that chews up a lot of time
Right.
during the winter months, but that's what all the annual's about,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
you mentioned, one other comment you had, annual. So some of the bigger properties, let's say Analog, for instance, or Certainty, they'll pay an annual fee.
Okay.
And, you know, because they know they're gonna have ongoing maintenance, so
Right.
that's what that number
Okay,
reflects,
right.
you know?
Okay. All right. Good. Further discussion, questions?
Just the fees that we charge, Mark, are they consistent?
Consistent?
with-
They-
Or the,
They are. And the gentleman over there in the small screen, hello there, I hope the weather's good over there.
Mr. Commissioner, it's been 80 degrees with a light breeze every day,
Oh,
so.
stop bragging, stop bragging.
Thank you as we watch the snow fall outside, but, you know, don't feel bad.
Anyway.
I might need to step away to turn the air conditioning on. But to Mr. Perjala's point, we raised fees, I believe, last year, so we're competitive with other communities or slightly above for building fees.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right.
Thank you, boss.
All right, anything further?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right,
you.
thank you. Enjoy the rest of the
Always love
evening.
looking
We'll do
at,
that.
always love looking at money that's coming in.
Money's good. Take care.
All right. Electric light. Thank you, Jimmy.
Hi, good evening.
Would you, introduce your two compatriots?
I have Darrell Panton and Kevin Shaughnessy here with me tonight.
Darrell?
Nice to see you all again.
Same here. All right, what page are we?
Mr. Mayor, if I could,
Yeah.
Darrell, if you guys wanted to start off with the 2018 numbers for cable. Let the FinCom know that we were number one again this year.
Sure, I didn't bring them with me, Tony, but yeah, we beat both Comcast and Verizon Fios again in number of customers.
Okay.
Oh, great.
This is the fourth year running, so
Okay.
we're all pretty happy about that. And all the credit goes to our loyal customers and our terrific staff.
Okay. Well, you'd even have a higher delta if you had NBA TV, but, you know, that's fine.
That's
Long
wonderful.
story.
That's great.
All right, that's
Good
good
to
news,
hear.
excellent. I remember when we first voted this, you heard these guys are gonna lose money, it's gonna be a, white elephant. I guess we've done pretty well over the years, haven't we?
Sure, and you consider the amount of advertising that they
Yeah.
do and the people on the streets,
Oh, sure.
the money they can throw at it, and, here's a little Norwood.
Well, I think
We're
what
beating them.
sets you guys apart is the level of service you provide. I mean, it's just unparalleled, it's nothing, compared to those other guys, I mean, not even close.
Sure. And the steady rates, I think, helps
Yeah.
as well.
I was just gonna say that,
Yeah.
yeah, the difference, I talked to people about the competitors and their rates and how, they get reeled in and then their rates just skyrocket.
Right.
Right.
Okay. All right. Floor is yours, Jimmy.
Okay, the biggest change on the salary side of it, we've have a allocation of some of the department funds. This is something that we've done actually every year anyway on our books, on our quarterly reports and on our DP reports. We've always charged off portions of the town expenses for the different departments in the insurance and pensions and retirement. So that all gets charged off. So this year in the budget itself, we're charging off. This is a typical number that we charge off. It's a percentage of the general manager's office, percentage of selectmen. I think it's 25% of the treasurers. It's 8% of the accounting office. I don't remember the percentages, but the numbers are reflected in other departments in the budget. So this is something that we've done anyway, and now we're just bringing it into a direct expense as opposed to,
What it really represents are the costs of services caused by the electric light department.
Exactly.
That are expended by, the various departments in the general government side, be it, treasurer, accounting, et cetera, et cetera.
right.
so he said something, by acknowledging that you've done this in the past, it's just probably not as formal upfront as this, or.
It wasn't in the budget.
Right.
What would happen to it after in other words,
So-
on the books, we always
No, I
did it.
understand, no, I understand, so there's no need or propose fee increase to make up for those dollars since you've already accounted for
No,
it?
no, it was always done, anyway, it
I think
doesn't,
it's important to.
doesn't really change any of the
People
mon-
know that there's $349,000 added, but it was just done differently in the past, but they always
Right.
have accounted for those dollars, so there's no potential fee increase
No,
to make
they-
up the
yeah,
$349,000.
it's not like we added 350,000 to the budget.
Okay.
It's it's always been in there, just like
Been in
our
there, now
insurance
it's just
costs are.
Officially in there, right?
Now it just tracks in a clearer manner, I
Yeah.
guess.
Okay.
If I could just point out, as it relates to the fee increase, one of the reasons we're spreading it out over a few years is to make sure that there's no sort of rate shock. And if you remember, I know FinCom knows this, and for the folks at home, the cost of power purchase, which is the main cost of the light department, fluctuates up and down. Whereas if you look at something like water or sewer, you generally just see sort of an upward trend. So you rarely have, I don't want to say you rarely have a good year with water and sewer. It's possible that those costs can go down, but if you balance things out at the light department, there's times that the fees go up, times that the cost of power goes up and down. So we're able to mitigate things a little bit easier there. And just one point, not that's directly related, Ms. Haley brought up the drop in debt service in the light department. We're expecting that big drop to come, but it's still several years up.
Yeah, okay.
On the purchase power, if I can, you want me to
Sure.
keep going? On the purchase power number, that, you can see that's up, I'm hoping in future years it gets better. The three pieces to your power bill, you know, when you buy it, it's energy, capacity, and transmission. I don't know if you remember me, if I told you that last, probably told you that last year. But it has gone, the capacity piece is the scariest piece of all. Transmission keeps creeping up.
Yeah.
The capacity piece, I think in 15 was like 16% of the bill. In 17, it was 24. This year, as of the calendar 18, it's 35% of the bill, the capacity cost.
Right.
So that's what's been driving the cost.
It's not as much that we're using more power, or the physical cost of power itself has gone up, it's some of those
The
ancillary
energy haven't
costs.
gone up much, but the capacity has. It's one of the products that
Yeah.
you pay for. Now, one of these things in this particular budget, which kind of shocked me, we had almost a 4% growth in energy last year. And I attribute a lot of that to at least one large industrial customer who was coming to town.
Yeah, I was gonna ask whether you can track that. yeah.
And because of that, I'm not even sure that the number I proposed is gonna be enough, you know, it's my best estimate.
Yeah.
But it really, they're using quite a bit more power, which will be good. I mean, the revenues will come in and support it in any case. If not, you know, I have to come back. But the usage is up almost to 340 million kilowatt hours a year. We're actually gone, you know, we had been there before. We actually have a graph here that can show you the historical usage. We've actually been there before, but now we're back up there again, you know, and the difference in here, part of it was the recession, and part of it was energy efficiency and the bulb, you know, they
Sure.
went to the LED bulb. But now we've come out of that, and, I don't know, we have a pretty deep growth chart there.
I think it was a pretty hot summer last year.
And it was a warm summer. The weather always plays a big part of
Yes,
it.
it was. I'm just curious, why is the capacity cost increasing at such a high level?
Well, you know, it's gonna be coming down. We know what the capacity cost is going forward. We actually have numbers all the way through. It has to do with plants that have closed, or that were closing, like Somerset closed.
Right.
A lot of generating plants closed, and that, they're all controlled for the most part now by private companies. They're not utility owned.
Okay.
So, sometimes they actually, you know, it's all about money to them, so I won't say they game it, but they, you know, if there's less,
Game it,
if there's less capacity, they, you know, they drive the price up, and they bid in to get a certain, amount to keep the plant open. In other words, they need so many dollars in capacity per kilowatt month or kilowatt year. The numbers are gonna be going down. This particular year, it's peaking, into the summer. And then it will drop back to what it was in 17 and 18, which is part of this past budget we've just seen. But we're gone from $7.40 to $11.60, is what we're at. Then we'll go back to $7.60, then the year after that, 2021, it will be $6.23. 21-22 will be $5.60. And the bid just came in for the following year, which is 22-23, at $3.80.
Now, why are they
Wow.
expecting such, certainly it's an increase in capacity, obviously. So
Well,
why would, why
You
would-
know, I think some of them anticipate maybe a line getting built up to Quebec, that would help.
Really? Because
Well,
that's
that's gonna
been,
be able to bring,
politically
you're able to bring in
Yeah.
power, cheaper power.
But to you, it doesn't matter whether they do that or not. I mean, if the bid, is for that amount, then that's what you get charged, whether that line is built or not.
Yeah, well, someone bid, but some companies are bidding to clear that price.
Okay.
And those are the prices today. They keep changing the rules. I won't say every day, but almost every meeting, someone comes in with a little wrinkle, and invariably, it drives the cost up for the most part.
Yeah.
So these numbers are the numbers today. They might change a little bit, but in other words, the trend is, it's cyclical. It goes up.
Yeah, well, don't
So
don't
we're not
worry.
locked
Well,
in
yeah.
for, like, that far out, we're not locked into all our
Okay.
power. Those contracts will still have some open
Okay.
parts to
Gotcha.
them, like.
I was gonna say, don't worry, in 12 years, we'll all be renewable energy anyway. God only knows what that'll cost, but that's a whole other issue.
Fossil fuels.
Yeah,
I know, really.
yeah. All right,
Just
very,
have to
very
change over all
helpful.
our systems to make use of the new system.
I mean, are there any
That will cost.
particular line items?
I think in general, I think the line item I was interested in mostly was your purchase of power.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a
Right. And
major.
it's an estimate, we know that. Everything else is pretty much,
Well, the power use
straightforward.
is, surprisingly, it's really, shot back up there, and I think we have a couple of big customers,
Yeah.
one down in Vanderbilt, he's a large customer, and then one up where
Right.
Polaroid used to be.
yeah, go ahead, David.
Jimmy, the
Meatball
one
place.
of the ones, it's a small one, but sticks out, it's a big increase, is the customer records and collection administrative expense from
Okay,
60,000.
yeah, that's that's the billing department.
Yeah.
And let me get the numbers, I can tell you what it breaks down. The postage is one part of that. The postage, actually, we missed it last year, we didn't have the increase in there, and the postage did go up. A large part of it is for the data conversion and data storage for the computer stuff. Cut over is about 30,000 of that. One of the things, in this line, in 588 line, one of the other lines is an increase, which, those are the old numbers, I'll have to give you the new numbers, but those are the PERC numbers. There's a large increase there, about $12,000 for training with respect to, beginning February 1st, all the municipal government falls under OSHA. And we've had someone in, we have, compliant, we have to almost double the amount of training that we do, and the record keeping coupled with that, it's substantial.
Okay.
Could you, I know you've explained this to me before, about 3 years ago, but could you explain the line on retained earnings and, the fact that it's flat every year? On page 98, top of power purchase.
Page,
So it's right here, Jim. This is the 1.1
million
with
line.
highlight.
I'm sorry, what that is, that's a pilot payment, and, it's only for it's not the whole pilot, in other words, obviously, all the money that we give to the town is the pilot payment. I mean, the whole group of money, but that number is specifically for the transmission system, which is PTF, it's a pole transmission facility. And the pole transmission facility, because it's a loop, it comes from the Sharon line comes down through our two substations and back. It loops in and it becomes part of the actual New England power pool. And because of that, any money on an annual basis, there's also a transmission account. Give you the number. In it's number, about halfway down the page, it's 4574. Is the number, with this year, you'll see there's a little bit of bump in that account. That's maintenance of transmission equipment. That number and that 1.1 number are recovered each year in the reimbursable money we have, plus the cost of the plant, the depreciated cost of the plant. So we actually get all of that money back that we paid. You know, we finished rebuilding that line, and all the money we'll put into the underground in the station. We actually get a transmission credit every year, which is basically paying that back. And that 1.1, we get 100% back of that every year, and that's why we keep that number stable.
Is that the one that will eventually go away, the 1.1?
No, that will,
That's
I'm
the
hoping that
other
will,
one. That's-
unless they change the rules. I mean, right now, the rule.
That's a 1.8 million one.
Yeah, no, that will, you know, that, we pay out of rate, but we get it back. That's not being paid by Eversource, that's being paid by the ISO, accredited by the ISO.
Okay.
Tony has talked in the recent past about increasing your reserves.
Yes.
To be lower than probably is being recommended by the state. So where does that show in here?
It doesn't show in here. It's after the income.
It's on the balance sheet.
It's on the balance, yeah. It's not an expense line. We don't have an amount budgeted, if you would, for that.
Okay, so is there a number you're trying to need to put in there?
For this coming year is gonna be very tight because the transmission number, because the capacity number rather was so high. Next year, I anticipate, putting about 1.1 million in there. But this year, in FY '20, it's gonna be very, very tight. I don't have it, I mean,
But I mean, your intention, you know, is to try to build that number up, which hopefully
no,
will.
the intention is to get that number up. Ideally, my goal, my long-term goal is to try to get it to the $10 million number.
Yeah, which in turn will help us when we go out to bid, future contracts.
So where are you now? The goal is
Well, right now, we're at 3.9 million. We've avoided the last year, we anticipated taking $700,000 out of our, paying it in, but we were able not to do that. We had the sales were up high enough that we were able not to take anything out of that. That was gonna go down. But anticipated for FY '21 is 1.1 million to put into that.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I could just interrupt, two real quick things, then I have to go. I have more of a water treatment facility coming up in just a few minutes.
Could you take some good pictures there, by the way?
I will take pictures and send them to you personally.
Thank you.
To Jimmy's point, just one quick note on the light rate stabilization, just for everyone to remember that the financial picture for the town and the financial picture for the light department are linked. So if one of them weakens, it sort of weakens the other. So we always have to keep that in mind, that we can't have a weak light department financial picture and a strong town picture. They're intimately linked in terms of their overall financial picture.
Okay, thank you.
With that, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I do need to head out.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks,
And
Tony.
thank you, Tony.
You guys continue having fun, and thanks to Sue for setting up the Skype chat.
Will do.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank you.
Take care,
care.
Tony.
All right. Good. Well, we have you. How are things going with the new construction over Access Road?
It's going well. I mean, there's not a lot to see right at the moment. It's mostly been like tearing down.
Yeah.
They have footing hole dug inside.
Doing footings,
Well, there'll be footing because they'll be putting some steel in.
some, retaining walls.
Well, these footings, there's actually steel, there's construction going inside of the building. But, and they have the,
So bearing walls kind
there'll,
of thing is what
there'll,
what
there'll
they're
there'll be
doing, yeah.
steel for that, and then, this,
What's on the outside there that they're building?
they just built the elevator shaft, they just, finished, breaking that up. And they're doing an awful lot of, welding inside, they're stiffening up, you know, it had the steel members that went across it. The building was very, very strong, but in order to meet the present earthquake codes, they had to stiffen up, a lot of the, you know, the steel girders, so they're basically welding steel on top of steel.
Yeah, okay.
But it's going well, I mean, they're on schedule,
On price so far?
they're on price so far, yeah,
Okay.
hopefully, I keep my fingers crossed that will happen.
Excellent. Okay. Anything
What's
further?
the estimated end date for construction?
Well, the substantial completion is for 12/11/19, the end of this year. But then they anticipate a month or two of punch list.
Yeah.
But that's a substantial completion date.
Because of the mild winter, they've got a lot of site work done that they would have had to wait on, but
Yeah, I
they'll never
mean,
commit to doing it.
Yeah, they
finishing
won't
it.
tell us, yeah, they won't tell us they're ahead of schedule, but
God forbid, yeah.
they're getting some of the stuff done that
Right.
I think they would have had to wait on.
Let me give you a call at some point.
Anytime,
see if I can
yeah,
get
anytime
the-
anybody wants to go down, just let me know.
We have meetings on Tuesdays at the trailer, so usually, to 10:30, usually before the, like, say 10,
Okay.
we do a tour with the owner
Yeah,
project manager.
all right.
so. I know you're probably not around, if you have to work, maybe you.
No,
Doesn't worry about
Oh, that's right, I forgot about
There's
that.
only one
You
member
come down
on the
anytime.
board that works now.
I'm a retired civil engineer,
I'm
so I like
sorry.
so I like to see things being built.
Well, we're down there.
Cool. All right.
Wear some good boots.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, anything further for Jim? Now we can get to Darrell. Darrell,
Okay.
it's all yours.
So, not a lot of big changes this year. The one that we always see going up year after year after year is the programming costs. That would be that first one, 7228, underneath salaries.
Even with some of the issues in the cable industry, the cost still goes up?
Yeah, the greed by these content providers is just, out of control.
Yeah, I mean, one would think that, with fewer people going to cable and more to the streaming services, you try to make it more affordable, but what do I know about
Well, if they don't get it from this
economics,
end, they're gonna get it from that end, right?
Yeah,
They're gonna get it
yeah,
somewhere, so.
yeah.
Tell that to ESPN.
Yeah, right.
They're so expensive, it's unbelievable.
Huge frightening.
Those in the regional sports networks, they kill us. You figure $5 of your bill is just for one channel, right? So it's
So
crazy.
100% increases from the off-airs, from the
Yeah.
Channel 5s and
Yeah.
for NBC. So this is a local, that you can get off-air, you don't even need
Yeah,
cable.
yeah.
And it's because they can.
They can.
It's the truth.
It's ridiculous about it.
The law is poorly written, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So,
It was written a long time ago, and
Yeah.
they never really
Yeah.
updated it. So hopefully, keep our fingers crossed year to year that they'll look at it again and
Yeah.
update the law. So yeah, that's the big one on the first page.
Everything else looks pretty much
Pretty flat.
level, yeah, flat.
Depreciation made a big jump up. And you'll see that change from year to year as well. Years that we borrow money, it's lower on
Yeah.
the operating budget. This year, we're not borrowing money, so it's all of our capital operation fees are gonna be coming straight out of the operation budget.
Okay. All right, anything coming up in the next year or so?
Well, we're looking at the distribution plant. Probably over the next 3 to 5 years, we're gonna have to upgrade it substantially. It's getting pretty old now.
Yeah.
We're almost at capacity. So we're looking at fiber to the home or some other technologies, what they call DOCSIS 3.1, which is kind of the platform that we're on now, but there's upgrades to it. But either way, it's gonna be pretty substantial costs. And really, it comes at a good time because that's when our bonds will be paid down. So,
Okay.
if we have to borrow more money at that time.
Shouldn't be that much of a hit.
Right. The other thing is, nobody really knows what's gonna go on with video going forward. We're kind of thinking that it's gonna be, all your TV content's gonna be on an app, right? It'll either come on your TV or you'll have to get a device to connect to your TV that's gonna
Yeah.
be an app. When you're watching Norwood Light Broadband TV, you just click on the app and watch it that way, so.
That's why speed is so important.
Yeah,
Right, yeah, that's where we need to be investing our money is in the internet
Right.
side of it, so.
Absolutely.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So will broadband and Norwood Light be together at the new facility, or will you there?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
both, the customer service will be centralized at the new facility.
Yeah.
So, you'll actually walk in the door and customer service will be right there. You won't have to go upstairs and down the hall.
Unfortunately, the head end has to stay there.
The head end will still be here. I didn't bring, I have a drawing. There are 3 pieces of the building up there that will be retaining. One is the fire alarm room, where the town fire alarm system comes out of. One is we have an electric switch gear room, which we can just lock the doors and there's some switch gear there. And then the head end. So those 3 pieces will be retaining more or less a substation. And I think the plan is to reuse the offices for the town purposes.
Okay. All right,
Okay, thank you.
good. Further discussion? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, that takes care of appointments. Just maybe quickly in the budget, Bernie, if you can give us maybe an update on insurance, sort of where we stand there.
Health insurance, we all know, is the major item in the budget in terms of insurance. The GIC told us that there'll be an average increase of 3%. Apparently no major plan design changes, but there may be some impact in terms of deductibles and co-pays. They've been a little bit cagey is perhaps the best word.
Yeah, they changed this year, I know.
I don't expect anything major, and as a result, there may not be any additional major shift in enrollment amongst plans. Although, I shouldn't say that with certainty, because 3% can cover a lot of sins. It's happened to us, you remember, 5-6 years ago, the average increase was, I don't know, 2.5 or 3%. But Harvard Pilgrim, which had the majority of our employees, went up double digits.
Yeah.
So the balance within the plans remains to be seen. But at least the good news is that the overall impact is a little bit lower than we projected. However, our enrollment is slowly growing. I mean, it's not rapid, but obviously as time marches on, as employees retire and remain in the plan, many of them fall into the Medicare plans, which certainly are less expensive, but nevertheless, there are more retirees. So when we go through open enrollment, as has been true in the past, we're gonna miss Michelle, obviously. We have to scramble at the end of open enrollment to look at the distribution and to try to forecast what is going to happen to enrollment. Our forecasts of some years, it seems by a miracle, they're more or less accurate. Some years they're not. Some years we've overestimated. Some years we've been bailed out by the Medicare Part D payment from the federal government. After telling us last year that there would be no further payments, there was an additional payment this year. I think the GIC essentially has been holding on to our money. But there will be no Medicare Part D payment next year, payment to the town. So if there's an error either way, there's not going to be as much room for error.
It just at this point, we know overall what the rate increase will be, but we don't know yet what the rate increase will be for the individual plans.
Correct. And we're still not sure of where we're going with enrollment, although we can take some guesses. In our other insurance plans, property insurance is increasing. I'm a little bit worried there because Maya has been revaluing our buildings every year. I can't say that I can protest too much because some of the values, we are insured for replacement value on almost all of our buildings. But when you carry the town hall at $3 to $5 million, we know that if they revalue it, it's very difficult to complain. And they're doing this with all of their accounts. yes, it's driving premiums up somewhat, not necessarily in a strict percentage increase basis, but their payouts are going up. As they incur losses,
Gotcha.
obviously,
Right,
costs are going up.
yeah, they're in the business to make money, we
Well,
get
they're not in the,
that.
they're in the business because they're a mutual essentially of the cities and towns,
Yeah,
but they have to break even. They
Right.
have to keep up with inflation.
Right, okay. All right. Thank you. Other business? David?
Three items. if
Sure,
I can.
go ahead.
One is, if everyone didn't see the selectmen's meeting, this past Tuesday, John Rogers and, Mike Rush were present. And one of the biggest topics of discussion, was, chapter 90, chapter 70 aid. And, Chairman Maloney asked him directly, typically in the past, we've used that number as sort of the bottom, hoping that others would raise it as we go through. And John Rogers emphatically said, don't necessarily count that methodology this year. I cannot say that the $1.1 million increase that NORD received in Chapter 70 money will be the same at the end of the process. There are a lot of towns complaining about the inequality of the changes, and who knows what negotiations will result in between Governor Baker and the state legislature and state senate. So that's might be of concern to those, all of us who are trying to work the school budget in reducing their needs. That certainly was not an encouraging statement. Number two, I'm hearing a lot of rumbling on the facilities management. I just wanted to give a slight update. We've still working very closely with the school department, trying to come to commonality on how we're going to proceed. But some of the things I'm hearing, not from the schools, but from people in the public, and I just want to emphasize it, they're saying, oh, why would we support it? It's going to cost the town hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is farthest from the truth. It's not going to cost this town hundreds of thousands of dollars. There are things that we're trying to incorporate. Just being on the Finance Commission, knowing that there's no appetite to increase spending, is that while there may be headcount increases over a period of time, the intent is to get some savings in advance so that we sort of pay for those. So, for example, a plumber. At some point in time, we want to hire a plumber. But working with Kathy and Paul in identifying plumbing expenses through the past years, we know that we should be able to save enough to pay for a typical salary for a plumber. So it's not gonna, people say you're gonna increase the headcount, yes, but those savings will come from reductions in other areas.
Isn't it really a matter of, instead of contracted services?
Yes.
We're gonna have personnel services,
Right.
even though you've got, the bennies or whatever associated with personnel services, just the markup you have going to somebody outside, more than offsets the cost of personnel.
Yes.
That's basically the argument.
Correct.
Well, if you look at that type of thing, the contractor has to pay for the same employee with the same employee benefits
That's a markup.
and plus the markup.
Let's make money.
So by
Other
only
expenses, yeah.
paying for the employee and
No,
the
I mean,
benefits, we're.
It's certainly logical.
It is, and there are some longer term savings. People have asked me, well, can you identify those savings? I said, well, I can't give you a dollar figure, but it just makes sense if you can bundle and standardize on, say, light fixtures, you're gonna get a better deal than if you went out project by project. That's number one. Number two, by addressing projects earlier in the game, it's not gonna cost us as much as if you have to wait 5 years because, we're being reactionary rather than proactive. You can do that. And three, the ability to in-house monitor some of these projects rather than going to the outside, we can save money. So I think you have to look at the bigger picture, and I want to stress that we are not adding hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars to the town budget to create this department. That was never the intent. It was to try to get a better handle on all facilities together, and I think we're on our way.
I think people need to understand that there is movement from one budget line item to the facilities. And that's across the board with some of the personnel, all of the office equipment kind of thing, everything that's, it's gonna move from one place in the budget to another place in the budget. There's, people don't seem to grasp that yet.
And,
It's a new
Maybe you need to
concept.
do a chart or something
It's a
to
new
help.
concept, I think, having the numbers up in black and white, I think would probably be a good
Yeah.
suggestion to do that when it's
Some kind of
the
chart.
town meeting.
And
Okay.
the last thing is, at some point, I do wanna talk about stabilization funds and the creation of, I'd like to put it on the warrant to create, one for, even if it's just start with $100, I don't care, but I think we should establish one for the large, equipment expenditures, so that we can try to identify an average dollar that we should contribute every year to avoid the $5 million hit, in 6 years, and allow a better, 5-year planning cycle to occur, because we're trying to take care of that. And I know it's tough with all the things that we're doing, but that doesn't mean we can't establish it and then at the right time start putting money into the fund. So I don't know,
Okay.
I know town meeting has to approve it, but I would really like the FinCom to review this, and then at some point,
Okay.
agree to put a placeholder in the warrant for that and do the right wording, which I'm unfamiliar with, but I
Okay.
just,
Particularly what kind for stabilization for
well, it's for the,
vehicles?
or / equipment, yes. So like we had when we bought the fire truck,
Okay.
right? We had to
It's a
borrow.
savings account.
It's, basically it is, but it
Yeah,
allows us to
okay.
say if we know what the long-term needs are, because, as Tony said, we have all the departments that have said, this is what I'm gonna need for vehicles over these years. And we can identify, the bigger ones and say, okay, if we add up what those costs will be, and it's, 8.9 million, you say, okay, if you do 890,000 a year for 10 years, there's your 8.9 million, you've covered it over a period of time, rather than waiting for the $6 million hit in year 6.
I mean, I understand that, I think it's a good concept, I mean, just budget-wise, it may be tough to put
Right.
any money in for a period of time, but I think, it's a good idea to have, the means of having that type of fund, so if we just,
Correct.
if the situation improves, we have the ability to do that, so, okay.
So isn't Tony already doing some capital?
He has he has a line item in the budget for $250,000, which is intended primarily for the new facilities department, so they have money available, they don't have to go
Right.
to town meeting to do any kind of, required or emergency-related maintenance.
Right, I got that one, but
Yeah.
I thought he was also adding another stabilization fund.
I know he's talked about it.
Yeah, so we'll see.
that-
I mean,
yeah.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, all right. Anything further?
We just have to get over a few.
Be a little issues
Well,
this
yeah.
year.
Like I said,
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily looking for an amount to be put in this year, but I think the
Right.
creation of
The
it
creation
will
is.
Well,
make
it
it
should be
available
within
for
our
at the right time to
policy.
start doing it, yeah.
It should be
Yeah.
in the
It
policies that
is.
we're doing.
There is one.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
I think that I think it's a great idea, and I think it's an initiative that I like to see us start, because it's not just for that particular area that kind of a stabilization fund be beneficial to us. There are several areas in the school, I think also, that they could have stabilization funds. Even if you can't fund them, at least you put together the mechanism in those years that you do have some capacity to,
Okay,
you have the
well-
ability to.
Well, we're meeting again the 14th, and we're having a special town meeting in April. So,
I believe the chairman of Maloney said that the 19th
right, I
would
was,
be the last day
I was gonna,
that
I was gonna,
warrants would
I was
have to
gonna
be-
suggest if you can, work on, some type of, motion for the finance commission that we can vote on that day, to forward to the, selectmen.
Okay.
I think that's, that's a good approach.
Yes.
Okay. All right, anything further? Hearing none, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
Made and seconded, seeing discussion, hearing none, all in favor, opposed, unanimous. Thank you very much.